Billionaire goes incognito as janitor for 7 days. Touching lunch gift from unsuspecting girl reveals hidden truths about wealth and struggle. Jack Thompson, the billionaire entrepreneur turned janitor, leaned against the high-backed stall of the university restroom. The sharp, sterile scent of cleaning supplies mixed with the faint remnants of student snacks swirling in the air. Days previously, he had sought this disguised Jim, the janitor, to escape the suffocating cocoon of high-rise penthouses and luxury sports cars. But now, as he mopped the polished floor, Jack found himself grappling with an oppressive weight on his chest that each swoosh of the mop couldn't dissolve. The hurried footsteps of students filled the halls while he scrubbed, a constant reminder of their ambitions, the lives intertwined with student loans and futures clouded by uncertainty. Here was a world vibrating with youthful hope yet marred by the looming specter of debt. Could he, a man who once breathed only success, understand their struggle? Each smile exchanged, every laughter echoed in the corridors, was a painful contrast to his own gilded existence, the luxurious life that felt increasingly illusory and hollow. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A knot tightened in his stomach, the gnawing feeling of discontent shifting urgently with every conversation. He overheard a woman crying about her grades, a group discussing crippling financial aid dilemmas. He felt their struggles dancing just out of reach of his comprehension, smothered beneath layers of wealth and privilege. Jack looked at his reflection in the mirror, unremarkable in dingy attire with a weary face that betrayed neither wealth nor comfort. He felt both invincible and fragile. Should he share his identity with anyone? Could the truth make a difference or merely isolate him further? Then she appeared. Emma, with her determined eyes and weary smile, approached during his lunch break, offering half of her homemade sandwich. Such simplicity struck Jack like a lightning bolt, illuminating the chasm between their worlds. He accepted with a nod, the act of generosity unraveling his self-imposed barriers. He learned about her life juggling classes, caring for those she loved, the constant pressure of tuition fees that loomed over her like a dark cloud. Her tales of perseverance intertwined with frustration and hope resonated deeply within Jack, igniting an ache that was both unfamiliar and raw. As they shared that quiet, stolen moment, Jack felt a transformation building. Her innocence pulled at unseen strings of his conscience. Could he bear to reveal himself to her? To expose the man behind the veil or linger in the shadows, enriched by the lessons of simplicity? Jack's resolve wavered under the weight of those decisions, spiraling relentlessly toward the brink. Each laugh they shared chipped away at his carefully constructed facade, urging him to confront not just Emma, but also himself. The final day whispered promises of resolution and torment alike. Jack understood that within him was the power to change lives, to break old patterns and build bridges to others' futures. Yet the thought paralyzed him. It was easier to return to the anonymity of wealth. Would his actions heal or haunt him? What if stepping forward only fractured the authentic bonds he'd started to forge, reducing Emma's struggles to mere charity? The stakes felt impossibly high. Facing his fate, Jack stood at the crossroads, every path fraught with consequence, each choice echoing the truth he desperately wished to unveil yet feared to confront. The final bell rang, and a wave of students poured into the hallway, their voices a bright cacophony of youth and ambition. Jack stood still, mop in hand, his mind swimming in turmoil. This was at the culmination of days spent living in a role he couldn't quite shake off. The disguise of Jim had morphed into something more profound, an opportunity to witness lives being forged under the weight of expectations. Yet now, with Emma's smile lingering in his mind, he felt the pull of his dual existence more than ever. He observed the students with fresh eyes, each one telling a story through their laughter and chatter, a narrative punctuated by burdens only he seemed to notice. A girl hurried past, her bag overflowing with textbooks while guiding a mentor who seemed lost in thought. A group of fresh-faced men animatedly debated on who was about to ace their final exams. Jack felt a yearning to belong, but stories like theirs felt out of reach, wrapped up in the privilege he had taken for granted. As the janitor's shift came to an end, he returned to the staff lounge, his fingers brushing against the rough edges of the mop handle in a meditative rhythm. Internally, he wrestled with the idea of returning to his former life ephemerally filled with power, yet he had tasted a different reality, one of humility and genuine connections. This seed of change was exotic and unsettling. For the first time in years, he felt vulnerable, an emotion he had cultivated in business but never quite embodied personally. He made an impulsive decision to gather his thoughts in the nearby park, a patch of grass flourishing amongst brick and stone. The quietness soothed him, yet anxiety pulsed beneath the surface. Jack had counted his achievements under the relentless guide of capitalism, but now he was scrambling for a personal purpose that so many around him seemed to possess. Could he redefine what success meant, as he had pursued wealth tirelessly for so long? Then, the image of Emma surfaced, her tireless optimism cracking his defenses. He had witnessed her struggles firsthand, yet in her, he found an echo of strength. It was this connection that made him reconsider the extent of his own wealth. Perhaps it was time to unearth the stories buried beneath his empire. If he could, for a brief moment, leverage his resources, he could help not as an abstract billionaire, but as a tangible participant in their world. His mind spun as he calculated the possibilities, but self-doubt quickly anchored him back. How could he mediate these aspirations without patronizing those he had come to admire? With determination, Jack pulled out his phone, typing out a message to Emma, one that could bridge their worlds. Would she even listen? The thought paralyzed him, yet propelled him into action. The stakes felt raw and daring as his fingers hovered over the keyboard. This moment of honesty could carve a path forward or firmly seal the chasm with bitter regret. Putting the device down, he contemplated the whispers of change that echoed within him. The boundary between his two lives blurred, and he confronted the core of his identity yet again. Was he ready to give up everything he had curated for the sake of authenticity? Or would he retreat back into the life of luxury, leaving behind the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to truly connect? In the growing twilight, the darkness mirrored the turmoil within him. The time had come to face not just himself, but the possibilities of what his life could become. The chilling thought settled, this decision would redefine him forever, slid a delicate fingertip across the threshold of his future. And as he stepped onto the road leading away from the park, a pulse of adrenaline surged through him. This wasn't just about riches or titles anymore, it was about taking a risk that could change others' lives and perhaps his own in ways he never anticipated. The real question hung above him like a storm cloud: would he dare to grasp that potential or allow it, like so many other things, to slip through his fingers? The morning sun filtered through the leaves as Jack committed fully to the decision that coursed through his veins like electricity. It was time to break free from the shackles of his self-imposed exile of wealth. He stepped inside the school again, this time with a renewed sense of purpose, a man on the brink of transformation, clad still in the drab uniform but carrying an aura of resolve. The corridors buzzed with conversations, yet Jack's focus honed in on the students, their zest bubbling over with aspirations. As they navigated through their schedules, he noticed the nuances in their interactions, the laughter, the camaraderie, but also the tensions lurking beneath. Each smile and shadow became part of a rich tapestry of experience that fascinated him. He began to wonder if navigating their stories could unveil his own buried ambitions. His first task was cleaning the common area where students lingered after classes. Armed with a broom, he found himself surrounded by chatter, where once he would have listened to corporate forecasts over expensive lunches. They spoke of college applications and dreams much bigger than their hometown. Amidst the sweeping and the sound of sneakers against tiled floors, a spark ignited within him. What were his dreams beyond the boardroom? Would re-engaging with his youth serve as a compass to find his way? As the day unfolded, an idea formed in his mind, bold but fraught with vulnerability, a mentoring initiative that drew from his corporate experience, yet without the weight of his titles. He could be a guide more genuine than what most students experienced. They would connect with him as Jack, not as a billionaire with a hidden agenda. In a moment of impulsive determination, he sought out the lounge during a lunch hour. The scene was chaotic, students vying for seats at crowded tables. He approached a group engaged in enthusiastic discussion about summer jobs. Their energy enveloped him, and he found himself listening intently, leaning into their dialogue instead of interrupting with his own insights. That was when Emma swung by, her face brightening at the sight of him. "Hey, Jim." Her innocent greeting forced him to take stock of his adopted persona. She made a point of connecting with those who wore their stories like badges, and here he was, still cloaked in anonymity. This facade, while it had its allure, also threatened to stifle the genuine interactions he craved. He could feel the walls he put up beginning to crumble. "Why don't you join us?" Emma asked, patting an empty chair beside her. Heart racing, Jack accepted. The vulnerability he had once dreaded now felt liberating. He listened, engaged, feeding off their conversations while unveiling bits of his own past. In sharing a few tales of corporate blunders, he noticed the students leaning closer, their eyes wide with interest. It was a shared connection, fragile yet powerful. But as warmth spread through him, a niggling doubt crept into his mind. What if they found out who he truly was? Would they still accept him? Would his advice become tainted by the upfront inequality of wealth? Questions gnawed at him, stirring an internal struggle that demanded recognition. With lunch winding down, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline as he approached Emma again, after the others filtered away. "Can we meet later? I have something I'd like to discuss, something I believe could help all of us if you're interested." Her brows furrowed, curiosity switching on. "Sure, what's up?" "Let's just say it involves harnessing a bit of experience," he replied, an excited knot forming in his stomach. The promise of tomorrow loomed like an unopened book, infinite paths ready to be penned. But as he walked away, a pang of apprehension returned. What if his shadow threatened their light? He took a deep breath, embracing the discomfort. It was a necessary part of this journey, an entryway into a part of life that demanded he be more than just a spectator. The anticipated conversation with Emma could steer the ship. It could either plunge him further into obscurity or usher in a form of redemption he had scarcely allowed himself to dream of, and as he stepped out of the crowded lunchroom, determination surged within him once again. Tomorrow could either be the day his quiet revolution began, or it would unveil another layer of personal conflict, forcing him to confront what he wanted to be versus what he had always been. Would he embrace the risk waiting to be discovered? The afternoon sun draped itself lazily over the school grounds as Jack paced through the hallways, his mind ablaze with anticipation. The idea of speaking to Emma had flickered for hours, a beacon drawing him closer to the burning question of who he could truly become. The prospect felt exhilarating, yet intimidating. He had spent so many years playing roles defined by wealth and privilege. Now, he was shedding that veneer in favor of something raw and real. He arrived at their designated meeting spot, an empty alcove by the art room, adorned with colorful student projects. Here, Jack could feel the energy of creativity, a welcomed contrast to the gray steel of corporate life. It was a space where youngsters dared to explore their wildest dreams, and he found himself hopeful that perhaps he could channel some of that youthful daring. As he awaited Emma, nerves danced in his stomach. Would she see value in his corporate narratives, or could they become just more empty tales to her? The questions loomed larger than before, and he resolved to approach the discussion with both authenticity and candor. His corporate experience was a staircase, not a pedestal. When Emma arrived, she breathed in enthusiasm, her presence warm and inviting. "Hey, Jack. So, what's cooking?" His heart raced as he gestured for her to sit. "Thanks for meeting me. I've been thinking about how I might be able to offer something back to students, especially those who might feel lost." "The mentoring initiative?" she asked, excitement dancing in her eyes. "Exactly. It dawned on me that while I've been locked in corporate structures, I've gained a wealth of experiences that could actually benefit peers who are trying to find their way." Emma leaned forward, intrigued. "So, how do we start?" Jack paused, the gravity of the moment hitting him. The leap required not just outlining benefits but inviting vulnerability. Here's where I need to be honest. I don't want to just sprinkle my past successes like confetti. I want to engage with you and your friends in a way that feels genuine. I want us to learn from each other. The air pulsed with a silence that felt heavy yet hopeful. Emma nodded slowly, absorbing his intentions. I get it. But how do you see us working together on this? I envision workshops where we can share experiences beyond the corporate facade. I'll share candid stories of both my triumphs and my failures, he explained, feeling lighter with each word. Maybe even some vulnerability exercises where we admit what we're struggling with. Emma's expression shifted from curiosity to contemplation. That could really resonate with people. But, some of the students may not trust you right away. They could see you as a rich guy coming to fix things. Jack winced, the truth stinging him. That's exactly what I fear, he admitted. I've spent so long being perceived as untouchable, and I don't want that to eclipse the authenticity of our conversations. Emma mulled this over, then responded, you might have to show them you're just as human as they are through sheer honesty and vulnerability. Stories about your mistakes can break down barriers much quicker than tales of success. Inspired, Jack felt a pulse of motivation crackle beneath his skin. Then that's what I'll do. I'll bear the truth of my journey. But I can't do it alone. I'll need your help to spread the word. Count me in, Emma said, her enthusiasm palpable. I'll make sure my group is on board. They'll trust you when they see you're willing to be real. Jack felt a spark of hope igniting. This was his chance to engage in messy, rich experiences alongside students who might feel as lost as he once did. As they spoke, ideas flowed freely between them: projects, workshops, real conversations crafted from their realities. Yet beneath the excitement lay an undercurrent of fear. Would he be able to truly connect, or would his insurmountable wealth overshadow their collaboration? That question festered in the back of his mind as they finished their brainstorming session. As Emma stood to leave, promising to rally her friends, he felt that familiar sense of urgency. He was no longer just a spectator but a participant in rewriting his own narrative. And yet, as he looked around the vibrant space filled with creativity and untapped potential, Jack realized he had a choice to make. Would he return to the safety of anonymity or step boldly into the light, risking rejection for connection? The moment was tantalizing but forbidding, each decision wrapped in the uncertainty of outcome. As the bell tolled, signaling the end of the day, he pondered what laid ahead: a chance at redemption or a confrontation with the barriers he had erected. Tomorrow lingered with unspent possibilities as he stepped back into the corridor, feeling a boldness blooming within him. But stark reality loomed over his excitement. The echoes of his past threatened to reverberate, demanding an answer. Would he dare to face his old self in the pursuit of creating a new legacy? The next morning, Jack awoke to an unsettling mix of excitement and dread. As he sat on the edge of his bed, he could still hear the hum of Emma's voice resonating in his mind. The thought of their planned workshops, candid storytelling, and vulnerability woven tightly with his ambition, brought both vigor and a sense of looming apprehension. Today would mark the beginning of his transformation, and the scale tilted precariously between opportunity and fear. He dressed meticulously, opting for a casual sophistication that contrasted sharply with his corporate attire. The choice seemed fitting for the new territory he was entering. Arriving at school, he felt out of place yet thrillingly alive. The unfamiliar environment buzzed with youthful energy, brimming with potential. As Jack approached the alcove, he noticed students bustling around, some deep in conversation, others retreating into their minds while scribbling in notebooks. This was a world that seemed devoid of the hollow conversations he was used to, a place where meaning was found in the simple act of sharing. His heart raced as he imagined how these students would respond to his presence. Emma arrived, her face lighting up when she saw him. "You made it. I've talked to a few people who are really interested." The spark in her eyes stirred a fire inside him. This was the moment he had dreamt of, where he could weave his corporate lessons into something authentic. Sitting together, they sketched out their plan further. Emma was clear and intentional, holding space for his ideas while challenging him to deepen his thinking. "What do these students need to hear?" she asked, her gaze steady. Jack paused, reflecting. "I think they need to hear that fear is part of the journey. I'm terrified too." The admission was fresh and raw, exposing the truth of his insecurities. "I want them to know it's okay to fail, to struggle. That's where growth lives." Her expression was thoughtful, and she nodded. "Let us do that then. Let us set the stage for real talk. I believe in this." Yet beneath her enthusiasm, Jack sensed skepticism. "We all wear masks for protection," she seemed to say, even if unconsciously. As they crafted their first session, ideas swirled around bold openness. Emma suggested they start with icebreakers that forced vulnerability, the kind Jack had shielded himself from for so long. "What if we each share a moment of failure?" she proposed, smirking at the intensity of the challenge. Jack hesitated, the balance between authenticity and pride striking him hard. Sharing personal failures felt akin to handing out daggers. One wrong revelation and he risked a backlash. "How do we make sure this doesn't become a confessional?" he questioned. He was not naive, he understood that vulnerability could indeed be misjudged. "That's the beauty," Emma exclaimed. "We'll create a safe space, no judgment. Just honesty." As they brainstormed further, they decided their workshop would be organized around real-world situations. Young adults often felt lost regarding their futures. Emphasizing the uncertainty they all faced could bridge the gap between generations, beginning with himself. The thought of dismantling the wall of privilege brick by brick excited him, challenging his own long-held beliefs. But later, as darkness descended after a fruitful day hunched against a private table in a coffee shop, Jack wrestled with doubt. Emma's unwavering trust in his sincerity haunted him. If he was to dismantle the barriers around his wealth and position, how could he do that without also sharing the depths of his upbringing? Could he risk their perception of him? Opening up about wealth was its own minefield. Who would care if he felt alone at the top? Yet, didn't their struggles warrant honesty? He was reminded of the expansive wealth that had often served as his armor, restricting connections. As he sipped his coffee, he made a promise to himself: he would practice what he preached. Jack couldn't afford to shy away any longer. He'd expose himself not just to the students but to the critical voice of doubt that gripped him. Transformation required permission to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be real. The echo of his resolve flooded him as he prepared for the first session. He was pushing into the unknown, just like those students felt often. The first workshop was only days away, and doubt remained a persistent specter. But deep down, he craved this process, blindly hopeful. He longed to become part of a rich dialogue of shared human experience, but what would happen when his truths collided with their challenges? As Jack walked back to his car, shadows danced along the path, illuminating every step with anticipation and fear. Tomorrow greeted him with uncertainty, a familiar path woven new through genuine connection, a daunting leap into self-discovery, and as he looked toward the horizon, a question loomed large: what would he unearth within himself when faced with a room full of raw, open hearts? A gust of wind whipped through the parking lot as Jack sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. The sounds of students nearby faded into a distant hum as he replayed Emma's words in his mind: just honesty. He let go of the wheel and exhaled slowly. Today, he would confront his self-doubt head-on, not merely for himself, but for the young mind seeking guidance. The anticipation of the workshop tingled at the back of his neck. Jack stepped out of the car, each footfall echoing his mixed emotions. The school building loomed ahead, a stark reminder of the risk he was about to take. With every step toward the entrance, his resolve solidified. He couldn't back down now. As he reached the designated room, Jack paused to survey the space. It was large enough to hold an audience, yet intimate enough for meaningful conversation. His gaze swept across the empty chairs, each one an opportunity for connection, and perhaps, confrontation. He took a moment to visualize the students arriving, their faces expectant yet anxious. "Okay, let us do this," he murmured to himself, pushing the door open. The faint scent of disinfectant mingled with the smell of fresh coffee, a bizarre comfort in the air. He set up a few chairs in a circle and laid down a pile of sticky notes and pens on a small table, tools for the honesty he intended to foster. Minutes later, students trickled in, buzzing with chatter that soon dulled as they spotted him. Jack recognized a few faces from the marketing class he had guest lectured, yet they seemed more tentative today than before. He smiled, trying to convey warmth through his uncertainty. "Thank you for coming," he began. "Today is about sharing, not just me sharing with you, but all of us sharing with one another." He could feel the skepticism in their stares. That nagging doubt crept back in, who was he to be their guide? But he pushed it aside. This was a chance to let them see his humanity, each moment offering a possibility to transform uncertainty into connection. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly as he navigated through the introduction. "Before we dive in, I'd like to kick off with something different. Let us share a moment of failure. Not to dwell on it, but to affirm that failure is a stepping stone for growth." The room felt charged. A young woman with vibrant purple hair raised her hand. "You start," she said, a challenge dancing in her tone. Jack felt the walls closing in. He could easily fill the silence with polished anecdotes from his corporate life, but that would only amplify the facade he was trying to dismantle. "All right. I'll go first," he managed, the admission feeling like a weight soaring from his chest. "I once lost a significant client because I didn't listen. I was so caught up in metrics and projections that I completely missed their needs, and I learned the hard way: approach conversations with people as people, not just numbers." Silence enveloped the room, and he felt its intensity. He was met with a range of expressions: curiosity, disbelief, and a touch of empathy. And then, one by one, the students began to share. Moments unfolded: lost scholarships, cancelled projects, personal struggles. Each voice carried a burst of authenticity, and it fed his growing determination. As their stories mingled in the air, Jack noticed a theme: vulnerability as a bridge. The students expressed emotions he recognized from his own life: the burden of expectation, the fear of inadequacy. He was learning too, the layers of his own walls peeling back with every heartfelt confession. After hours of unpacking and exploring each narrative, Jack realized he was not just guiding, he was part of the tapestry of shared experiences. A revelation flickered in his mind: his privilege was not only a barrier, it was also a tool, a position that allowed him to facilitate these conversations. Still, the lurking question remained: if he was to share his experiences fully, would they accept him when he revealed the entirety of his story? Would they still see him as one of them, or would his wealth and background cast a long shadow over their connection? As closing remarks circled through the room, Jack's heart raced. He had navigated today's emotional terrain, but one last step loomed large. Tomorrow, he would confront the essence of his past, sharing truths that could either strengthen this budding bond or erect new barriers. What would he uncover in his own honesty? The stakes felt higher than ever. With the weight of the upcoming revelation heavy on his mind, Jack's pulse quickened as he pondered the answer. How would they react when they learned who he really was? Jack awoke restless, the weight of the next day pressing down on him like a storm cloud gathering overhead. In the stillness of his bedroom, he repeated Emma's advice: just honesty, and felt the mantra wrestle with his tangled thoughts. Did he truly possess the strength to bare his soul? The fear clawed at him: what if they saw him as an imposter, a figure of privilege detached from their struggles? He roused himself from bed, the sunlight filtering through the curtains like a tease of hope, nudging his resolve to solidify. Today was not merely about revelations, it was an opportunity for transformation. His past, filled with achievements and advantages, could serve as a model of resilience, not armor to hide behind. Over coffee, Jack contemplated how he would frame his story. Would he focus on the battles he faced in the corporate world or delve into the personal sacrifices made for success? Each thought propelled a wave of anxiety, yet the more he visualized the students' faces, the more determined he became to forge a genuine connection. As he prepared for the workshop, Jack chose his attire carefully, neat but approachable. He wanted to strike a balance between professionalism and relatability. The crispness of his shirt felt foreign, an echo of a role he was trying to shake off. Arriving at the school, he felt the familiar mix of trepidation and anticipation wash over him. The hallways were alive with youthful energy, laughter echoing around him, but he couldn't shake the feeling of coming from another world, a place where success was a metric rather than a lived experience. Stepping into the room, Jack was greeted by nods and shy smiles. He took a deep breath and initiated the session. "Thank you for being here again. Today, I want to dive deeper into authenticity. What does it mean to be truly honest with ourselves and each other?" As the students took their seats, Jack felt an urgency to share his story, to peel back the layers they couldn't see. "I haven't always been the person who sits before you now. There was a time when I was lost in my ambitions, letting them define who I was." He could see skepticism cross some faces as he continued, "I grew up in a wealthy family, and while it afforded me opportunities, it also came with its own set of expectations. I was molded to follow a path: business, success, the good life, but somewhere along the way, I forgot to ask myself what I wanted. I lost sight of passion for the sake of profit." A ripple of surprise passed through the group. Jack paused, absorbing their reactions. Vulnerability opened a door, but would they walk through it with him? Beneath the initial surprise, he detected intrigue, and that emboldened him. He spoke of the turning point in his life, a pivotal moment when he attended a charity event against his will and encountered people driven by purpose, not wealth. This jarring experience shattered his preconceived notions, forcing him to reconsider his values. "I realized," he said, his voice steady, "that life isn't just about climbing the ladder of success, it's about climbing towards something meaningful. I began to embrace not only my victories but also my failures, my hesitations, and even my insecurities." As he continued, the room transformed. The students leaned in, captivated. With every story he shared, he saw the defenses crumbling. Some faces mirrored his own past while others reflected the struggle of trying to carve out identity amidst expectations. Finally, he ended with a heartfelt invitation. "I want us to be honest with each other, not just about where we've come from, but about where we're going. What have you learned from your own stories?" The room filled with silence, anticipation humming in the air as if each student was weighing the risk of their exposure against the potential of acceptance. Jack felt an electrifying pull, a collective stirring toward possibility. This was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance for connection forged through honesty. But as eyes met his, Jack sensed a pivotal choice. Would they accept his story, embrace him as one of their own, or would they turn away from the privilege he dared reveal? With this tension looming, he wondered if he had ventured too far into the realm of vulnerability, and if the power of his past could keep them united, or if it would drive that wedge deeper. The moment felt fragile, knotted with potential and hesitation. What awaited him in their responses? Would they reciprocate with their truths? The searching gaze of each student seized him, and Jack's heart thundered in anticipation of the unfolding revelation. Jack's heart raced as the stillness enveloped him, each second stretching into an eternity. He could see the wheels turning in their minds, a mix of curiosity and apprehension evident in their expressions. Was his honesty a bridge, or merely a wall? As he waited for a response, his mind navigated through the multitude of thoughts battling for dominance: fear and hope, despair and eagerness. A girl by the window broke the silence, her voice timid yet resolute. "What was it like, realizing all that about yourself?" Her authenticity struck Jack. It was a question that revealed vulnerability and a desire for connection, one he felt would resonate. He sensed a shift. The students were no longer mere faces in a crowd. They were seekers, grappling with their own identities. It was painful, he admitted, the words wobbling on his tongue. "I felt like I had betrayed myself." Jack's eyelids fluttered as he recalled the churning of emotions when he first grappled with the idea that his pursuits were hollow. "But that pain led me to introspection, to really facing who I was and who I wanted to become. It was the catalyst for change." He spotted a boy in the front row, slouched and wearing a skeptical expression. "So, do you regret it? All that money and success?" The question lingered in the air, sharp and pointed. Jack could feel the scrutiny, a potential trial of character. "No, I don't." He folded his arms, standing a little taller. "What I regret is not recognizing earlier that wealth doesn't equate to happiness or fulfillment. It's about the impact we create, the connections we forge. Those connections, built on honesty, can catalyze real growth." As Jack spoke, he felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with relief. He wasn't just sharing, he was engaging. The tension of judgment began to ebb, replaced by a collective willingness to open up and explore together. He could see the students shifting their postures, leaning forward, their breath synchronized with the rhythm of his words. "Sharing my story doesn't erase my privileges. But acknowledging them gives me a responsibility to use that platform to help others find their paths," he continued, letting the honesty hang in the air. "And I believe we all have the capacity to impact each other, regardless of where we come from." The room stirred, whispers darting like startled birds, and Jack recognized that opening up wasn't merely a choice, it was vital. In that moment, he realized his vulnerability was an asset, a point of intersection between worlds that often felt disparate. "I want to share more," he encouraged, looking around the room, inviting stories to emerge, sweet and bitter alike. "Take that leap with me. What stories do you have that can guide us toward understanding?" A hand shot up from the back, a surprising contrast to the earlier hesitance. It belonged to a girl whose face glowed with a mix of fear and excitement. "I've always felt pressured to conform to my family's expectations," she admitted. "I want to be an artist, but they want me in finance. How do I balance that?" Jack felt a rush of empathy wash over him. "By understanding your own values," he replied, his voice steady, "and communicating them with honesty. Your art has a place in this world, just as much as any financial career. Ask yourself every day what truly ignites your passion." A palpable energy filled the room. The walls once lined with doubt were now painted with the colors of burgeoning comprehension and connection. Jack leaned into this moment. His own fears were being displaced by the thrill of new dialogues. As students began to share, Jack realized he wasn't merely a teacher but also a learner in a shared experience. He took quick notes, details crystallizing into themes of conflict, desire, and purpose. Each story became an arrow, pointing toward the uncharted regions of their minds and hearts, exposing truths that begged to be verbalized and validated, but amidst this swirling energy, uncertainty lingered, whispering doubts. Would these revelations create more unity than division? Was he really a catalyst for their transformations, or were they merely echoing his fears? As the workshop continued, his role shifted, and time passed unnoticed. Yet, a question nagged at him: could he maintain this depth of connection with more than just words? Oh, with the students' stories building momentum, Jack felt the pressing urgency of the looming choices ahead. How would they continue to explore their truths as the real world awaited beyond these walls? As he watched a shy girl beginning to open up about her struggles, Jack realized he was standing at the precipice of not just their journey but his own. What awaited them at this crossroads? Perception, identity, clarity, or chaos? The future was looming ahead, and they were all about to step into it together. Jack marveled at the flicker of honesty illuminating the room, the energy palpable as students exchanged their fears. He had stepped into this role as a facilitator but found himself wading into deeper waters, where his own uncertainty surged amid their vulnerable admissions. The girl who sought balance between art and finance had sparked something infinitely complex within him. He felt a pressing urgency to explore his own dichotomies, pushing him to question existence beyond mere appearances. There was something unrelenting in the way her eyes searched for validation, a reminder of his past self, hungry for acceptance but starved of authenticity. Jack's internal struggle began to mirror the feelings swirling in that classroom. He recognized the constraints he had often placed on himself, shackles disguised as expectations. Could he, a man shaped by privilege and success, risk vulnerability again? Could he align his actions with the lessons he was imparting? Let us not stop here, Jack proposed, gathering the confidence to light the path further. What if we go deeper? Think about a moment that changed you fundamentally. Silence fell again, thick with contemplation. He noticed the boy who had questioned his past choices, fingers fiddling nervously with the edge of his notebook. Jack's heart thumped. A recognition bloomed. He too was still searching for a moment that could crystallize his understanding. But what could that moment be? Just then, a soft voice broke through the still air. What if we fail? The fear in her tone tugged at Jack's heartstrings. What if being honest doesn't lead us anywhere good? Her question hung heavy, necessitating experience and bravery to confront it. Failure is a part of growth, Jack said slowly, pulling from his own scars. It teaches us resilience. Look around. We're all navigating confusion, but that doesn't mean we can't emerge stronger. Some students shifted uncomfortably at the thought of failure, yet others appeared contemplative, wrestling with the potential for vulnerability. Jack had suggested a leap, but now wondered if he himself was prepared to leap alongside them. Was he willing to confront the deeper dissatisfaction that lingered beneath his surface? He unearthed an alarming reality: he had been avoiding the crucial conversation surrounding his own desires. His past experiences, however liberating in potential, had shaped a shield that kept the authenticity at bay. Just before addressing the class again, an unforeseen doubt crept in: why should they listen to him? They were on a path toward profound truths, yet who was he to assume the role of guide? I don't have all the answers, he confessed, feeling the weight of his words. I'm here to learn alongside you. A wave of relief washed over him as the students visibly relaxed. Jack realized this shared journey needed to feature raw honesty from him. He couldn't simply preach the lessons of his journey without embodying them. Let us all make a pact, he continued, his voice firm but open. Let us commit to honesty, whether it leads us to triumph or failure. We can't predict the outcome, but we can assure ourselves it will lead us toward clarity. Time slipped away as Jack facilitated a dialogue about their experiences, but an echo of uncertainty shadowed him. What if they uncovered truths that he was unprepared to confront? What if this exploration led to his own unmasking that would shatter the delicate balance he had built? As students shared tales of rebellion against expectations, Jack's thoughts coiled tighter with anxiety. Would he find validation in their struggles, or would his own inadequacies surface like venomous snakes in a garden? The hour ended, but Jack felt a stirring within, a tentative yearning for growth ignited by honest exploration. They were poised on the brink of revelations, yet for him, the challenge loomed larger, confronting his past and committing to authenticity he had resisted all along. As he gathered his notes, a student's laughter broke the tension. What's next? Are we ready for the real world? Jack chuckled. Softly, an impulse of dread caught in his throat. The time has come to face the music, he thought. But could he be courageous enough to acknowledge the symphony of his own life, its dissonances and harmonies alike? The final confrontation waited to bear its fruit, but what would it reveal about him? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the school grounds, Jack stood at the doorstep of transformation. He had crossed a pivotal threshold. The days spent with Emma and the students had shifted him in ways he never anticipated. These recent workshops had not merely been a platform for teaching, they had become a crucible of his own evolution. With their honesty reverberating in him, he realized the gravity of his remaining task: to confront his wealth openly and vulnerably. This moment had been months in the making, one threaded through self-doubt, intrigue, and now, a burgeoning confidence. As he prepared to address the group once more, he felt a tingling anticipation compelling him to divulge the truths he had skirted. He was ready to unveil the layers of his identity that wealth had concealed for far too long. Stepping into the classroom, the familiar hum of energy washed over him. Students greeted him with eager eyes, now knowing that they were all knotting their stories together, crafting a tapestry steeped in vulnerability. Jack could see the power of honesty weaving through the air, palpable and inviting. Today, he began, his voice steadier than he expected, I want to share something that's always lurked in the shadows of my success. I've let my wealth define me, and in doing that, I detached myself from the very real struggles that brought you all here. You deserve this honesty as much as I do." He felt the weight of their gazes, the mixture of curiosity and expectation creating a cocoon that buoyed him. Jack launched into his story, detailing the privilege that had afforded him the best of everything, yet had also lulled him into believing it was the only measure of worth. The room grew still. "I was shielded from the fears and failures that cultivate resilience," he admitted. "For too long, I equated my success with my self-worth, believing that the dollar signs represented my value. But here's the truth, my journey isn't just a story of achievements." He took a breath, letting the silence thicken. "It's also one marked by a fear of failure. I too have felt the pressure of expectations. I just had access to a safety net that masked my fears." The reaction from the students shifted. He saw nods of recognition, faces softening as they connected with the humanity of his words. In their eyes, he saw reflections of his own past, a longing for authenticity, an eagerness to break down barriers. Jack proceeded with candor. "My real regret is not fully embracing my failures. I want you to know that wealth isn't a shield that protects me from hardship, it can gray the lines of empathy and understanding." He recalled poignant moments from the workshops, how sharing his flaws had built bridges between their lives. "I stand before you not as an out-of-touch billionaire, but as Jack, someone who wrestles with the same fears, who struggles to find his place. If you take away anything from my story, let it be this: it's not about where you start, but how you carve your journey forward. Your passion is just as valuable as any financial investment." A quiet moment hung heavily in the air as the gravity of his revelations settled in. Jack could feel the weight lifting. He had finally accepted the narrative of his life not merely as a testimony of riches, but as a journey to vulnerability and connection. One by one, hands began to rise again. Students spoke about the pressure they felt, the expectations that suffocated their pursuits, and the passion they harbored beneath layers of doubt. Jack engaged with each story, heart swelling. These confessions began to erase the lingering fears of rejection he had held tightly. They had invited him into their vulnerability, and it was a privilege, one that transformed him further. With each shared truth, commonalities emerged like scattered pieces of a puzzle, fitting seamlessly into a broader narrative of growth and connection. Jack began to see beyond the confines of his corporate identity. The richness of shared experiences ignited purpose. Hours slipped by, and as their workshop concluded, the palpable tension of unease fell away, leaving space for excitement and camaraderie. He had not merely shared his story, he had opened a door for others to step through and find their voices. A student approached him, her expression brightened by understanding. "Thank you for being real with us," she said. "It means a lot." In that moment, Jack felt the warm glow of validation, a satisfying recognition not of his wealth, but of his authenticity. This was his achievement, an acceptance of his dual nature, the reconciliation of who he was with who he aspired to be. As the students trickled out, the afternoon sun bathed the room in golden light, illuminating both their faces and growing confidence. Jack felt a surge of fulfillment, a deep, rooted growth blossomed within him. He conquered not just personal demons but had emerged from the workforce's ambitions into the light of genuine connection. Jack Thompson, the billionaire, was no longer a facade. He had woven humility into his life's fabric, carving a new legacy not defined by wealth but by sincerity, a legacy he was eager to embrace. As he locked the classroom door and walked away, determination surged through him. It was time to harness this newfound clarity beyond the confines of the classroom. He would engage fully in this initiative, seeking ways to elevate the students' voices while forging his own narrative of authenticity. This was just the beginning. Now is the moment to bring your own stories of vulnerability and courage to the forefront. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans understand the significance of supporting transformative journeys.